Greetings, YouTube. Welcome to Sunaru Gaming. I'm Sly and SR. With me today is New Earth creator Graham Pike. Hi, Graham.
Hello.
Hello. Subject of today's talk is beat 'em ups, and I think we sort of had like a previous discussion about separating it out from sort of your side-scrolling with a bunch of enemies and something where it's sort of a limited number of characters on a fixed boundary, sort of fighting.
Yeah, what we used to call them one-on-one. I used to call one-on-one beat 'em ups, which was the Street Fighter, King of Fighters type of. And then, as you say, walk-along beat 'em ups like Streets of Rage, Golden Axe, and Double Dragon, that sort of thing. Sometimes you do get like Double Dragon. That has been a one-on-one game. It has been a walk-along game.
Yeah.
Sometimes they sort of. Yeah, in fact, I think that'd be a good idea for these companies to get their one-on-one sort of tribe and just do a one-off sort of scrolling beat 'em up. And you know, using the characters like a Streets of Rage one, or not Streets of Rage, Street Fighter one, or Samurai Showdown one, or that'd be quite good.
It would be good. I think Tekken tried that. Was it Tekken 3? Something like that. They tried. It was all right, but it was really janky, as you'd expect, being a 3D fighter, and then they're trying to make it a 3D beat 'em up. But I think they did try that at one point, but I don't think it came off as well as they were hoping. It was sort of like a something in the menu that was extra rather than the main game. So.
Yeah, there was a game which I think we've referred to in the past, which is called Dynamite Decker in Japan. I think that meant Dynamite Cops.
Yes.
And it was sort of 3D, but usually in like a room or a limited area. But that had that horrible gaming sort of thing of, if you're running for a door, you have to press a button at a certain time to slide underneath it or shout and stuff like that, which I didn't like. But the fighting in it wasn't that bad. It's always, I always find like real 3D fighting rather than just jumping foreground and background or isometric. Or those sort of isometric ones. It's quite difficult. I think that's why they don't do them much. It's quite difficult to make them work. I think the programming is quite difficult to get it really accurate.
I think there's a lot of anime games that have taken on that sort of, I forgot what they call it, like arena fighter. Where it's almost like a third-person view over the shoulder, and you've got a very large 3D environment, like Dragon Ball Z do it.
I've seen one of your videos when you playing one of those, aren't you?
Yeah, Jump Force. It's one of Camera Face's games, and it's sort of much later version of those early sort of Dragon Ball Z games and various other things like that. They're not as popular as they were about 10 years ago. So you still see them, but a lot rarer, because those Dragon Ball Z games and those games of those ilk used to come out yearly. They just don't anymore. I think it's gone back to that sort of 3D fighters on a 2D, 2.5D plane kind of thing. That sort of they've all gone back to that sort of probably even Tekken is sort of 2.5, I guess. And Dead or Alive and Mortal Kombat especially is very much back in that 2D realm. They did go full 3D at one point, and then they went back again.
I suppose Virtua Fighter was one of the first ones to try and do that.
Yeah.
Back in the day. It's a long time since I've seen that game, but
yeah.
But it's always what can I put it? It's like half measures. It's not properly 3D. It's very hard to control. It's very hard to how you view the game and camera work. I suppose with the more modern games you can, but I think it would be quite a difficult thing to do. I don't think anybody's mastered it yet. Perhaps if you were using a VR set or something, that might work. I don't know. But it's not something that greatly appeals to me anyway. But,
no, I don't like the idea of VR anyway. So can't imagine
me neither.
In the sitting room just.
Well, it's like I can like when you play first-person role-playing games or adventure games, like Elder Scrolls or something like that. It's nothing worse than when somehow you run out, haven't got any weapons, and you're whacking people, little fists going. It's just poor. Even in games like that, I prefer to use an bow and arrow than I do a sword.
Yeah,
it's just more fun, isn't it?
Yeah. So, what was your first experience of a beat 'em up game that you remember playing?
Beat 'em up games. Do you mean one-on-one or walk-along? Are we doing both?
Let's do both. Okay, both. So walk-along. Let's start with walk-along.
Well, I think definitely walk-alongs. Again, Streets of Rage on the Mega Drive, the first one, and games like Robo Army and that X-Men one, which was quite popular. I can remember that it had a 4-controller. You could have a fairly large screen and 4 controllers in front of it, so 4 people could play, each 4 of the X-Men, one each, But I only have played it one other person, so. But those are, I always really liked those type of games. My first thing about one-on-one was that it must have been Street Fighter, I suppose, and I didn't take to it initially. I thought it became really big really quickly. So I wasn't really that impressed. It wasn't until I got into, about the same time I got into the Neo Geo, and obviously Neo Geo was very big on that sort of one-on-one fighting game. And so I started to give it a go. Initially it seemed very hard because to pull off some of the moves, you had to do some really sort of tricky little, to do your direction controller to do like all the sort of lower half of the directions, and then do like A and a B or B and C together or whatever. So, but I often found if I just like waggled the stick like mad in like a circular motion, press buttons, something would happen of interest. But it wasn't very technical way of doing it. But I often found with I've said this before, but one-on-one beat 'em ups, I often found you just had to gauge the enemy, because you employ one tactic, especially on the early levels where it's a bit easier, just kicking at low kicks and when they're down, and then suddenly none of that works because you come across that somebody's better. And once you get to second, as you know, things get harder and harder. And then you're waiting to sort of see a tactic which does work. And obviously you can't employ the same tactic over and over again because the computer knows that. It'll have some sort of AI. Well, it won't have an AI. It'll have a lot of variables in its controller, in its way it reacts if it's been programmed properly. So you can't just do one tactic, but you can usually find 1 or 2 things which work at certain times. I find with all sorts of games, but a lot to do with beat 'em ups, whether one-on-one or walking. It's a lot to do with positioning and timing as much as it is tricky control work. And I think that's how it should be, really. It's like on Streets of Rage 2, the best way is to always never be directly in front of your opponent, always come in from the side. I mean, you do go directly in front of them, especially the weaker ones. You see, like on Streets of Rage, there's certain characters that this is like these top guys, bald sort of topless guys. You never jump them because they just knock you out the air. Whereas everybody else, it's a reasonably good tactic to, if they're at a distance, to get into them quickly, do a jump kick. But for most characters, apart from some of the really hard ones, if you move them from the side, you almost always get them. You're either going to throw them to the floor or just grab hold of them and start whacking them, But also with one-on-one fighting, it's also a lot of it to do with positioning as to when you pull off your maneuver. But that's with most video games, I think, especially arcade games. It's a lot because I think with arcade games, apart from one-on-one fights, they don't tend to have too much tricky control because people can't learn it that quickly, and they don't want to be, arcade games should be quick to get into, and just you have to stick with it. But I think that was the first thing that, in my mind, that came to having quite complicated control things you have to pull off really quick, in a quick succession. You couldn't think, up, down, left, right, A, B, Z. You just couldn't do that. It was like you have to do it quickly, otherwise you'll wait for somebody to pummel you. So you're better off just doing a low kick and then get it backing off, and then. But yeah, a lot to do with timing. When somebody kicks you, when you react to it is incredibly important. Sometimes doing it too quickly will be bad. Sometimes waiting to the last minute will be bad. Or it's just your gaming brain will work it out fairly quickly how to time these things, because you might think it, intellectually, but as I said before, with a lot of games, your background brain takes over, and it's instinctive reactions rather than consciously thinking, right, I'm going to do this, that, and the other. Because I think they get too far, especially as you get near the end. But yeah, often it depends on the game. Some games can be overcome by a couple of sort of sneaky maneuvers. Other games you really have to just get really good at the game to win with shoot 'em ups, with beat 'em ups. I mean, especially one-on-one. So I've never been a massive fan, but if they're particularly wacky or particularly, I do like them with good missile attacks, because often there's a power thing you can throw at them, or something that you literally whiz things at people. And also, I just find having an interesting character, like we said with all these other games, shoot 'em up, having characters you can relate to. To me, a conventional beat 'em up guide doesn't really interest me. You know, like this some Shaolin monk or a muscly wrestler, or all these sort of Bruce Lee or type of character. All them, they're all great. But I just don't. I think, oh gosh, I've seen it 100 times. And I'd much rather have the wacky maid that's hitting them with a broomstick, or somebody dressed up as half animal, or and it is. I mean, I think most, even what we call a serious fighters, they've always got a humorous element, because mostly programmed in Japan, and they've all got like this wacky sense of humour, and they like to put it in their games. I think it's really important. You've got to have a bit of a laugh at these games, but the more surreal and bizarre, as long as they still play properly, the more I like. But of those two types, to say one-on-one beat 'em ups is a genre which has been really heavily covered, and even now I'm sure there's quite a few about that are being programmed. Whereas the walk-along fighter had a little heyday back in the 90s, and it's just a scarcity.
Yeah, it's not around so much anymore. I don't think it. I think where the 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, whatever you want to call it, fighters evolved from 2D to 3D. The transition for the walk-along beat-em-ups wasn't quite the same. I know we get stuff like the closest thing now is probably the old, not the latest God of War, but God of War and Devil May Cry and Dynasty Warriors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Walking along, smashing up things in a 3D environment is probably
a lot closer. I quite liked. There was one. I can't remember what it was called now. It was a bit like the Dynasty Warriors, but it had a different name. But I quite got into that. But they're always only one player. You very rarely get two players in those games. I suppose there's too much going on. But then again, they're very samey, those type of games. I mean, I suppose walk-along beat-em-ups are samey, but I find with those, like, usually you've got a sword and you're doing like spin attacks or doing. They're good because the graphics are nice, and they usually have a really interesting world. But I just think the gameplay is a bit limited and too samey to want to do a lot of them. Once in a blue moon. So I have enjoyed it. I can't remember what it was called now. But I don't know what you call that, adventure fighter or something like that. But like Dynasty Warriors and things like that. I'm not sure what they call that.
Yeah, I mean, they don't call it beat 'em up.
No.
But it's sort of the equivalent these days, because the only time you sort of see them now is either indie developers, or as we've seen very recently with Streets of Rage 4, they get a slightly larger company with a bigger name either re-release or remake or come out with a sequel, which is nice to see. It's good to see that. But then the whole stream of indie games, I've noticed that on the upcoming list on Switch and on PlayStation, there's loads of very similar games to Streets of Rage. Obviously, it's a trend thing. So now they've come out with that. A lot of the indie developers are trying and get into that niche.
It's funny because I don't think of myself as a gaming snob by any way. I don't care, who. But I often find a lot of those indie games just don't appeal to me. It's like I was looking slightly off subject, but I was looking at a lot of shoot 'em ups available on different consoles. A lot of them, they're just like the graphics are like 8-bit type of graphics. I think they made the game clever, but they've missed the point. Shoot 'em ups should be glamorous. Shoot 'em ups should be exciting, draw you in. And it's not really good enough, in my opinion, just to have like a little pixelated blobby thing going around, even though it can do all sorts of clever things.
Yeah.
I'd rather they made it look good as well.
Yeah.
But I suppose if you're an independent, but I find that with a lot of indie things, they're often like clever things that people have made up. They're not exciting.
Yeah. And the developers have favourite games, don't they? I suppose it's sort of a homage to that. And
usually, get your Mega Drive out, play Golden Axe or something like that, rather than I agree. I think, as we've said, Streets of Rage 4, that's how these things should, in my view, should be done. Lots of homages with the music and the way it plays and the sound effects to the original, but they've improved it. It's a bit faster. In fact, it's quite funny because when you in Streets of Rage 4, when you can unlock all the old characters from Streets of Rage 1, 2, and 3, but they play like they do in the original game, so they're a bit weird. But the new one's a bit more fluid, and the sound effects are like really harsh. When you've been used to the Streets of Rage 4 sound effect, then I think I was playing Streets of Rage 2 character Axel. God, it sounded really. They've kept the original sound effects, which I like, but God, they sound harsh in comparison. It's but give it its due. You can actually play the whole game with Streets of Rage original series music, and that works. Even though it's still sort of 16-bitty in its sound, it works. It's still got atmosphere. It doesn't sound dated, because music sort of all music, especially these days, is such a mixture of old and new that it sort of works. Like we were saying, I think we discussed, it's all down to characterization, isn't it? You have to, I suppose, not just win the game. You want to win the game, and you want your particular character to get through. And we all tend to choose. So I find I often choose the same type or certain types. Usually, like the wackiest one, I often go for the female characters. I don't know why, but I always tend to fight with the female characters. I think it's because they're the less conventional.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And out of the female character, I won't go for the big muscly one that looks like she'd be WWF or something. I go for the little weird one, sort of
dinky one
that looks totally out of place. I think, well, what's he doing in a fight? But actually, that to me is more appealing. Like on Kabuki Clash on the Neo Geo, my favourite girl was this tiny little axe girl. I would say it was Axe was probably taller than her. I don't know if you've actually seen that game yet.
I've played it.
Yeah. I can't remember her name, but she does this spin attack. Her whole body and the axe sort of spins around. But I just found her like an amusing character to play. Although it's not my favourite type. My favourite type of game, the one-on-one beat 'em up. Every now and then, you get a really good one, and you think, wow, I can understand why. I think there's I think it's part of the Fatal Fury series, but there's a game called Garou: Mark of the Wolves. When I got my Neo SD, that was one of the first games I put on for some reason. I think I just wanted to review it, and I thought I was really impressed with it. Even though it was very conventional beat 'em up, no wacky weird, a few slightly weird characters in it, but compared with what I usually like. But it was just such a good quality game, considering it's a 90s game. It looked smart. It played really well. I was really impressed with it. And
mechanics are really tight with that game as well. It feels really. I noticed that with the Fatal Fury, those real bout Fatal Fury games I really like. Mark of the Wolves, being the later version, I guess. Really sort of emphasizes how good that is and how far they went with the characters as well. With Terry getting older and then some of the younger characters coming in, and I don't know too much of the story of those younger characters, but it worked well. Sometimes when you introduce new characters to sort of one-on-one fighting games, they don't always gel.
No, it can take away from it. No, it's funny how you don't. Some things like I may have missed. Like I've been playing Streets of Rage 4 a lot, and then we put on Burning Fight, which is an old Walking Along one on the Neo Geo. God, it's so boring in comparison. The characters are really sluggish,
Yeah.
And they just do some really weird moves, and you think, because you got used to things reacting quicker, and suddenly, you sort of, I pressed my button. Why didn't he do it? Sort of, before you pulled off what you were trying to do. Someone just whacked you, But it's I think a lot of things are all relative. If you've only played that game, then you wouldn't notice it, and then suddenly you're playing other games. You think,
yeah.
But I think that's why I always preferred Mutation Nation on the Neo Geo, even though it didn't have a lot of variety in what you could do. It was pretty sharp in the way all the movement, sharp graphics, everything else was done so well. It drew you in, and it did. The characters reacted well to your controls. Burning Fight was probably the weakest on that. For that, I mean, it looked quite nice, and it was slightly reminiscent of Streets of Rage in that you're walking along mainly along, sort of malls and streets and on the back of lorries and on trains, as they do on Streets of Rage. So I think it was SNK's homage to Streets of Rage, really. But it wasn't as good. I mean, they had really nice big sprites, and it looked glamorous, but it doesn't move as well. But I think probably Mutation Nation. I've always liked that one because it looks and sounds so good, but two, I think it actually reasonably sharp on how it reacts now, how it's been programmed to react to your controls.
You get
some mega important.
Yeah, you get some unusual bad guys in Mutation Nation as well.
And
unique, I just think that special abilities.
Yeah. You shouldn't have to just look what you can and what you can't do against these people. Like in an e-fighting game, you just come across a new character, and your initial thoughts are lay into them. Then you realise with some of them, no, don't wait till you're in the right position. Because it's like anything. It's any sort of game. Some parts you have to get through as quickly as you can. Other parts you have to. I mean, I tend to like with any sort of scrolling game, whether it's shooting or I tend to like to hold back a bit, check things out. If you do that too much, you miss stuff, and then you just get overwhelmed by characters that you could have killed off earlier and stuff like that. So that's the whole thing about gaming, isn't it? It's you've got to time it. There's even on Streets of Rage 4, actually, there's a bit where there's one section, I can't remember which stage it's on, but we always tend to like take on all the characters, and then we kill them all, and then right at the end there's a ton of health and things that we could have picked up, and we might not have lost a life if we fought on and got further on. But we always tend to forget. I say we are. My partner and I, we play it together. But that's the thing, it's not always good to hang back. I like to be cautious, but sometimes because there's nothing worse than just wading in all the time. Because one, it's repetitive, and two, you're going to start hitting things you shouldn't have done, and that's the whole thing about games, and trying to get that balance, trying to get that. Or eventually you remember what's coming, so you judge it that way as well.
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking, like, in a way, it's like watching a film. It's always a bit special the first time, but the better games, they get better as you play them more. You know what I mean? It's like some films, you watch them once, you think, I enjoyed it, but I can't be bothered to watch it again. Whereas a good film, you could watch it. I don't mean that watch it again the same day, but over a few years, you can watch it a dozen times over 5 or 10 years and really enjoy it. Some films actually enjoy more the second or third time because I've actually missed bits the first time, or often, same with games as well. I think sometimes you expect too much, or you had this build up. It's like we were saying the other day about Polestar and Blazing Star. One, you had this build up for the second one, so it was always going to be a slight disappointment. Same with some games. You perhaps expect a bit much or expect a certain thing. I think game players are like a lot of people who are quite traditional, and they like things how they like it. Now they've got good at this, doing it this way, and then suddenly, they're not doing it right. But sometimes they are right. The programmers have fucking it up a bit, or they're just too they've been thrown out of their comfort zone, which nobody likes really.
I think stuff like that's what's the term, double-edged sword, because it's nice to be able to go online and go, what's this about, and have a quick look. But then there's so much opinion online these days. Back before everyone was using the internet, you'd either by sort of word of mouth, or you would read it in a magazine, or you would just see the game playing on a TV in a shop. You'd experience things a lot differently. Now, 9 times out of 10, you're going to go online to check whether it looks like something you would like before you buy it, or before you and by the time you've done that, you've got some, unless it's just straight gameplay, you've got so many people's opinions, and I hear other people voicing other people's opinions. They've not even played the games. So
no, I don't really like most people. I'll use YouTube or whatever for finding out about games, but I never look at a review. I always just look at gameplay, just because, and not gameplay that's got somebody talking through it either. I much prefer, because, as you say, so many times with anything, games, films, it's been slagged off, and when we actually get around to playing it or seeing it, you think, actually, I quite enjoyed that. But I don't know if the others. I mean, everybody's right reviewers, and they tend to get a little bit arrogant in their viewpoint. You know what I mean? They suck up a little bit of knowledge about dangerous things. They've got to know certain things, and then they know in their mind they know what's good and what's bad, rather than And I think it's something we all do, but I tend to try and be a bit more reactive and instinctive when I'm just sort of, if I wanted to review something, I tend to see how it affected me when I put it on, But yeah, I think the last thing I'd want to watch on a YouTube video or whatever is all the intro, because that's part of the fun. I love, especially on Japanese games, I love switching on, watching all this sort of who's done it sort of rolling forward, and then suddenly whammo, then some sort of powerful music comes on, and there's these characters whizzing in, and I like all that. But I think that's all part of it. It's like I don't want to see that beforehand. It's like it's like when you get on a movie and you go on the menu and there's all like bits of the film through in the back. I don't want to see that. Say I've seen the film once before, like 18 months, 2 years ago. I don't want to be reminded what's in the film. I want to come to it as freshly as I can, And so it's a bit like that with a game. I don't want the excitement of initially opening the game up, even whether you download it or got it in hard copy. I want the excitement of putting it in or loading it up and just being taken. Because I've got that with a lot of games. It can put you in the right mood for a game. I think with a lot of beat 'em ups or any type of game, really, it can start you off. It draws you in. Just watch the thing. You say, it looks really good. I like that character, or the music's powerful, or evocative, and you're drawn in. If you've been watching it over on YouTube or something, it's taken all the buzz out of it, hasn't it? Really, it's my view anyway. But I think there's a lot to be said. It's like we said, it's a lot to be drawing you in. Because let's face it, most one-on-one or 2D, some 3D one-on-ones or walk-alongs, it's a similar type of play, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some will have more like missile involved in it. Some it'll have like sort of more supernatural things in it, crazy things. Other things will just be straight sort of martial or exaggerated martial skills, should we say?
Yeah.
And I don't think I've seen one beat 'em up which really reflected real life. They'd be boring, wouldn't it? This way, I suppose there's old-fashioned boxing games, but I think most one-on-one beat 'em ups as we know them and walk-along beat 'em ups are exaggerated. They're unrealistic. They're they're a fantasy version. And because, as you know, if somebody got pounded that much, said other broken bones or at least be concussed or heavily bruised. But you can get somebody does this super power attack and knocks them and whams them to the ground and head first down into the dust. They come up looking fresh as a daisy, don't they? I've never seen there might be some, but I don't recall any games where they come up, looking like one eye down and eye closing, or probably a good thing actually, but a bit gruesome. But again, nobody wants the reality of combat. They might think they do, but no, once you get smacked in the face, it's not a pleasant thing. So it's. Go on.
Speaking about exaggerated fighting games, Mortal Kombat. Sort of
I only ever played that in the arcades. I never bought. It's just not. I didn't like that sort of semi-photorealistic. Even from the early days, 16-bit, they tried to make it look like a photorealistic. I just didn't think it worked. It looked stiff, and it was less realistic in a way because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they also played on the gore factor, ripping people's heads off. Which didn't bother me. I didn't find it, sickening or anything. I just thought, nah, it just looks ludicrous. But
it's a lot more basic than something, because I remember I've always been very average at Street Fighter. I remember Mortal Kombat it was a lot more simplified compared to Street Fighter, and being younger at the time, that's what I found more appealing about Mortal Kombat. Strangely enough, didn't notice all the blood and the stuff like that the news and parents and things always seem to be worried about. But it seemed to be a little bit more. I think that's why younger people, not just the gore, but it was simple. It was only really punch, kick, jump, and then you might be able to learn a special move, depending on the character. Whereas Street Fighter, there was a little bit more tactic to it. And I like Street Fighter a lot, but I'm just not good enough at it. Just not good enough.
Yeah, it's quite a skillful game. No, I never really got into Street Fighter, but as soon as because as I said before, it's almost a bit like football teams. If you like SNK, more Street Fighter, fair. You want Art of Fighting or Samurai Showdown rather than. So I tended to ignore them mainly. I've been aware of them. I have played them a bit, but no, I suppose I quite like games like Tekken and that when they came out. There's some interesting characters, but no, I tend to. It's like I was saying to you the other day. about shoot 'em up game, I tend to prefer the graphics. I'd rather have graphics clear and sharp, so I can, rather than trying to look realistic. And somehow they often put like a misty hue on it, so it makes it easy to program, I guess. And it becomes less easy to see what's going on. And I don't really want that. I want to see exactly what's going on. Whether it's a shoot 'em up or a beat 'em up, you don't want to be misled by sort of slightly shonky graphics, or because I know, especially with the 16-bit sort of moving into 32-bit, they were trying to, even with 2D games, they were trying to give them like a photorealism, and a lot of times it just didn't work. It wasn't fluid, and there was one on the Neo Geo called Shinoken. It had another name as well, I can't remember. It had a bit of class in some ways, but the graphics just didn't work. Again, they were trying to look for a photorealistic sort of look, but it failed, because you lose fluidity, you lose definition, I think. I'd rather have something more cartoony, as long as it's really well-defined game, so you can really see what's going on, and really, because how you react to things is very much to do with positioning, as we've said. And if you can't see exactly what's coming your way, it ruins it, really.
Those early 3D one-on-one fighting games, Virtual Fighter, the first Tekken, first Dead or Alive, I'm sure there's one or two I'm missing there, Fighting Vipers, etc. The mechanics were always floppy, and they weren't quite
a bit chunky.
Yeah. And it took a few years until that became any good. I think Tekken 3 was really good on the PlayStation, first PlayStation. I think that's when they started to nail the 3D fighters being tight. The mechanics were good. It didn't feel messy and sloppy.
No.
It started to feel a lot better around then. And then with the original Xbox, Dead or Alive 3, and something that Dead or Alive, certainly that game, more so than the early ones, I know it was there, but the sort of counter move that you would have. So instead of just block and then you would hit them back, which you would have in a lot of the 2D games, you would now go to punch and someone would grab your punch, pull you out the way and hit you. So it'd be like, and it was really clever the way they brought that in.
Yeah, a bit like in sword fighting, have a riposte, don't you? You block a move and get one in yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. I can remember Dead or Alive. I don't know which one it was when that came out, because I think the biggest thing was it had these like really attractive women in it.
Yeah.
I think that obviously appeals
to the
younger,
third one.
The younger man, yeah. Because they even brought out a Dead or Alive. Was it volleyball or some sort of
extreme beach volleyball? Yeah.
Yeah, it was just an obvious sort of what's the word? Well, I don't know. Well, it's just sort of trying to appeal to the baser instincts of just like, well, who cares about the game? Look at those women and how they're animated,
Yeah.
But, and shamefully, I seem to remember playing it as well. But it was incredibly boring. Oh God, I don't care how good looking the women are. I'm not playing that.
Yeah.
But no, I can remember Dead or Alive being quite impressive as it moved along through its sequels.
It's been left behind a bit now. I think Tekken has sort of become the master of that 3D fighter. Dead or Alive is slowly sort of dying out. There's a lot of people that don't know so much about it anymore. Virtual Fighter's gone, as far as I'm aware. I think that hit number 5. Number 4 was really good, but the 5th one seemed to take a step back.
No, I never really followed the sequels.
Yeah, and King of Fighters did a few. I know that the latest ones have like 3D on a 2D plane. But I remember when Maximum Impact came out, I had that thick book. One of them came in you got a little thick book guide with it. And it was this nice little case. I think they brought out 2 Maximum Impacts. I never played the second one. There's a few games, Bloody Raw, where you could change into, you'd have your characters would transform. You'd have one that's a werewolf, and you'd have one that's like
I remember that one vaguely.
Yeah, that died out as well. That was really good at one point.
There was another one called Rival Schools. I think that was just a one-off game. I can't remember what console it was playing. Again, it was a little bit salacious in the fact that obviously attractive schoolgirls involved in it. But I seem to remember it played quite well. But it's such a long time ago.
Is that 3D?
I think it was probably half 2.5 as you're referring to it. I don't think it was out and out 3D, but I just remember at the time it was. I was throughout the 90s and some of the noughties. I was really into the anime, the Japanese sort of way of doing it. And it was so Japanese. I really liked it. But more for just the whole world that he was involved in it rather than. But no, it was. I've never been I never called myself one of my fighting games, but when you look over the years, yes, I've played a lot of them. One, because I was a Neo Geo fan, but two, actually, some of them are quite good, because in the old days, I don't know if it's still got, I don't buy magazines now, just look on the internet like everybody else, but you used to get every month you get a demo disc in the old days. So really you could play level 1 of most games or whatever. And, so really, you could get to see games. I think at rival schools, I don't think I actually owned it. I think I just played an extensive demo on it. And I thought, I didn't buy it in the end, but that was good. I quite liked the demo discs in the old. I mean, so a lot of it, you'd have about, we've got 7 games on this month, and think, but only one of them I'd want to play, But you'd have a quick look at the other ones, and they'd have all sorts of other bits of interesting news. You don't get many platform beat 'em ups, do you? Really, usually.
No, you don't. I mean, you get sort of that
similar. Do you remember?
Go on.
Strider, do you remember that? I think it was called
Strider. That rings a bell. That definitely rings a bell.
I think it was a Mega Drive game or something like that, 16-bit era, and I think it's.
Sure, I had that.
Well, that was a lot of mostly close combat and sliding attacks, and I think you could throw stuff as well, but it didn't have. I don't think you had. It's a long time since I played it, but it very much on doing jumps and slides, and because it was like slightly exploratory as well.
Yeah.
But it's a one-player game, but quite good. I suppose a bit like sort of beat 'em up version of Contra or something like that, so you could only have one player.
Yeah.
2D Contra rather than the isometric one you were talking about the other
day. Yeah. And Guardian Heroes.
Guardian Heroes, yeah.
I re-downloaded that on Xbox. I think I mentioned that before. So they sort of remastered it, but you can play the modern one or the older one. And yeah, it's not
as good as Saturn one.
No, it's not the same.
I think again the only thing that Guardian Heroes, when I very first started playing it, part of me was expecting, because obviously you had Gunstar Heroes, which was a shooter on done like Treasure as well. So there was that, and I was thinking again, that Streets of Rage, walk along, but it's so completely different because you've got like three planes, haven't you? Back, middle, and you do these completely weird and wacky moves, and it's a really good game, but it was just so different than anything I expected. So it took me a little while to realise what was going on. Because at first it just seemed like random and weird. It's a bit odd. Yeah, I like the look of it. I like the music, but you have to persevere to find out exactly what it did.
Just going back to where you were mentioning with Hardcore Mecha about them just throwing lots of story in. I noticed lots of games seem to do that now, where it seems really important and story can be really important. But if you've got a game where the mechanics and everything is so tight, and that's what's drawing people in, you don't need to throw all the extra bells and whistles in necessarily. Or you can add it on afterwards and then say, do you want to replay with all this information? Or you can turn it off.
I agree. Yeah, I think with arcade game, if it's arcadey, as we say, action-based game, you don't want that. And that game, they've put a little bit too much in it. It doesn't ruin it, but it takes away from the intensity. You know what I mean? Like, it should be, I've still got a way to get to the end, but with this one, you get like tiny bit into it, there's another level third, and it's like, no, wait, so let's just do the whole, whole big level, then we'll have some talking at the end. But I mean, you don't tend to get that with the one-on-ones, though, do you?
No, I mean they're usually quite good with the story in the sense that it's there, but it's extremely basic, and it's just to highlight and emphasize the characters more than anything else. I think it gets, like we mentioned before with Galaxy Fight, it's a bit more wacky and they're in a backstory and things. Tekken as well. Where Tekken's gone now is ridiculous, but it always had the odd wacky character, but it was sort of grounded in really tight gameplay with sort of, we were saying before that some of the fighters were more traditional martial artists and things, and Tekken's just, the further it's gone along, the more wacky things they've added in. Whereas I think that's where Dead or Alive fell short, is it never really had, although it had ninjas in it and it had this sort of theme around the ninjas, the story just fell short all the time. I think something Mortal Kombat's managed to do is, out of all the fighting games, and probably because their original games were so basic, that they've managed to stem these massive storylines for the characters and things over the years. The Mortal Kombat story, I'm not up to date with what's going on with Mortal Kombat at the moment. I'm probably about 10 years behind. But there was a point there where it became so interesting with the story, and the gameplay was there. Not the first or the second, when it became a lot bigger than just, let's have these little sprites do things. And they did really well with the story, but they managed to improve the action, which allowed them to stay up there with things like Street Fighter. And Street Fighter is hardly evolved at all. Certainly Street Fighter 2 to Street Fighter, are we on 5 now? 4 or 5? It's so similar to what it was. And I think the strength of Street Fighter, although some of the characters are really good, a lot of them are a bit naff, certainly the newer ones, but the gameplay's always been really tight. So they've always managed to do that.
Yeah, usually you just have like a couple of amusing remarks between the winner and loser at the end of the thing, don't you? Or at the beginning of a fight, somebody will make a disparaging remark about the other side, or they'll refer to their parents or something. But yeah, it's I wish this for a fighting game. It's just about right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, say some of the characters, as you say, when you got like you've got Fatal Fury and King of Fighters, which tends to, some of the characters are in both. You tend to know the characters fairly well, so they need a little bit of storyline. It's interesting, but they don't have to bang it home because you know who they are. And just what's happened to them recently and why are they fighting this person now? Well, there's usually a little grudge going on. But it's interesting. But I mean, yeah, some of the characters you get to like, and you're likely to, more likely to choose them, I suppose, because you like them. But yeah, it draws you in more without banging on too much about what they've been doing, what's going to happen later. Because it's an action game, so why do you really need to know?
Yeah.
But, and obviously they have to develop the characters because I suppose they age them a bit in a way, but not as fact they get really old or anything. Obviously, they develop them, make graphically as well. They're going to look a lot more detailed and impressive as the consoles go by. But did you say you've got that SNK Heroines on the PS4?
I got it on the Switch.
All right. Yeah, that's because that's a really weird game because they've really simplified a lot of the moves on that one. It's quite easy to pull off.
It's quite fun.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it. And on PS4, I haven't seen the Switch version. It's really impressive. It's so visually stunning. The backdrops. I mean, they've done a thing. It's very much a 2D game with sort of 3D looking, but 2D in reality backdrops. But no, it's so well done.
Yeah, definitely.
I should imagine the Switch is similar, but not quite as
they sort of scale it back so it performs as well, but the visuals aren't quite as good. I don't know if it will come up on camera.
Yeah, that looks like it.
That was. I think it worked. I think it's compared to something like if you were playing King of Fighters 14. If you were new, you've never played a one-on-one game before, and you go, right, here's King of Fighters 14, you'd be overwhelmed because there's so much going on. It's a lot more complicated. It's built for people that love fighting games. It's built for people that love those games. SNK Heroines would be a lot easier for anyone to play. I find much more easier to play casual, because sometimes I like playing one-on-one fighting games casually, not just, I'm going to stick it on hard mode and see if I can get there. Sometimes I'm fine. And SNK Heroines, it's a lot easier to play in sort of medium or something.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it looks really good. It looks really good. I like what they've done. It's a bit odd playing Terry as a female character.
Yeah, it's a bit bizarre, isn't it? Should have just dragged him up. It would have been funnier.
Yeah, well, they did that with one of the other characters, didn't they? From King of Fighters, is it Iori that's on the game?
All right. Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's is it Mister X or Miss X or something? It's just him in drag with like a. Is he wearing a Victorian outfit and a hat and something? They should have just done that with half the characters. Would have been hilarious.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, it's funny. You sometimes will say it'd have been Galaxy Fight, which is a name we drop every chat. Wouldn't it be good to see that? Wouldn't it be good to see that on the PS4? You know, souped up.
Yes.
Because it was pushing the Neo Geo really with its style of graphics. Wasn't the typical sort of hand-drawn-y cartoon graphics. It was more semi sort of photographic-y looking, wasn't it? Or I don't know how you described the graphics on that, but
yeah, I mean it could
halfway
easily be
house
done
between
as well.
one of them.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, wouldn't it be good?
Yeah,
just ump it up and make it look 10 times better. Add a few new characters.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Be great.
Or even just a sequel.
Yeah, I don't know if Sunsoft is still going, even, to be honest. Or something up.
Yeah, I don't know.
Probably not, because a lot of these people, the
probably just a publisher now or something.
Yeah,
they tend to
back
take
in the day, a lot of they'd sort of programmers would move away from one. That's how SNK they got some of the good programmers. I think it was from Capcom went to SNK, and that's why they really shone in the early 90s, because they'd got this sort of dream team from other people, and I think that probably happened a lot over the years. People move away, and I don't know the ins and outs. I don't read enough about it to know, how these companies, who moves. I don't know. I couldn't name you one game producer really. I know you hear about famous ones, but I've never taken an interest in game developers as personalities. Don't know why, but
you mentioned earlier about a platforming sort of beat 'em up fighting game, and the only one that springs to mind, and I don't know if it's a Nintendo developed game by itself or whether someone developed it for Nintendo. I'm not very good at either. So I don't really play it very often. Is Super Smash Brothers. That's something I'm not very good at, but that's sort of very much not on a walking along platform, but very much you got several bits of platform, and you're sort of 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, etc.
Yeah,
and I don't know if they created that themselves or.
It was mega, highly thought of, that game, and I never played it. I don't know why. I just never got around to getting it or playing it. So I don't.
Your top 5 walk along beat 'em ups and your top 5 1-on-1 fighting type games?
Well, to be honest, I could do Streets of Rage. When we say there's 4 Streets of Rage, to be honest, I think I like the 4th one more than any of them. I think it's really good. So I'd have to say Streets of Rage 4, Robo Army, of course. I'd say Golden Axe. I think that was a really good game.
Yeah.
It's Mutation Nation.
I always remember that the sound he makes when he uses his special move, like
yeah, and I think Guardian Heroes would be.
Oh, okay, nice one.
What are yours?
Mine.
Are your top 5?
I've not even thought about it. Good
it's
question.
All right asking me these questions.
Yeah.
Well, all right.
I'll try and think of my own next time I come up with questions.
Okay. Top 5 1-on-1, definitely.
And give you that one.
Yeah. So God, it goes out your mind, doesn't it? I tell you what I really like. That one I keep forgetting the name of. The one with the robots on the Dreamcast.
Oh, Techromancer.
Techromancer, that's definitely my top 5.
Yeah, that's a great game.
Techromancer, Galaxy Fight. It's got to be in there.
Would you class Power Stone 2 as a beat 'em up? Because I know it's an arcade game, but the second one, you're walking along various different things. I suppose you're beating each other up, so it's more of a one-on-one. Yeah. Oh, it's a bit of both.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, I liked the game a lot of the time. It hasn't really stuck in my head, like you can remember. Oh damn, it's gone out of my head now.
Do you want me to just list off loads of fighting game brands?
No. I can think of a lot, but There's one in my head which I like even more than Galaxy Fight, but I can't remember what it is.
Oh.
So what have I got? Galaxy Fight? What was it? What I just said? I said another one,
Technomancer.
Technomancer, Galaxy Fight, yeah.
Kabuki Clash, you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, that'd be in there. But I'm sure there's another one on the Dreamcast I really like, but I can't bring it to mind. Waku Waku 7.
Waku Waku 7, nice.
Yeah, and I think I like that. Again, I've only played it recently, and you mentioned it again. It's on the Neo Geo, but it's like quite a late game.
Matrimony?
Matrimony, yeah, that's in there as well.
Oh, what a game. Oh, that's a brilliant game.
Yeah, so yeah, Matrimony, Waku Waku 7, Galaxy Fight, Kabuki Clash, and Technomancer.
Brilliant.
Because that had everything. Technomancer had everything. It was like 2.5D, wasn't it?
Mm.
Plus, the robots are brilliant. There's some really wacky ones, some sort of more hardcore looking ones, and bizarre ones. And like when you do a super move, I mean, one of them, like the curtain comes down, it opens, and something really wacky's going on. The whole thing is just like it's otherworldly, really. But yeah, no.
Mechanically, it was really tight as well. It wasn't because sometimes when they do wacky games, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But it just felt really tight, and it was really well done.
Yeah, it was a good game. But yeah, that Matrimony, that's got some good characters.
That's hilarious.
That's one that's got like a cowboy with a whip, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
it's all like
Poochie, where he's like he's dressed up as a dog.
Yeah, like it's got one of those. What do they call those people that like to dress up in animal
furries?
Yeah, it looks like one of them, doesn't it? Yeah,
he does. I've never had to pause a game and laugh the way because I recorded me playing it on that 161-in-1. I had to pause it, and I just could not stop laughing. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
He sort of sticks his bum out. It's
quite camp.
Old lady pulling her teeth out, and throwing it.
Oh yeah, that's brilliant. Yes. So I haven't played it, but I had a really, really intense sort of load of sessions because I was doing a review. So obviously I shouldn't review a game if I haven't completed it. So you have to really keep going. But no, I really enjoyed that. There's plenty of really good laughs in it.
That's one where they've got those. You know what you were saying? They throw like one-liners. Their one-liners in that game are brilliant.
And also, there's one thing where you got like a little band playing behind singing songs.
Yes, and the music's amazing in that game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Considering that's all done on the Neo Geo, really, which is like 1990s for the kit. They've really done
a bit of death.
Proud.
One of them had like a woman hanging from something playing acoustic singing.
Yeah.
And then you'd have like how is this? It came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It was brilliant.
Yeah, it's good though. Yeah. That's
and
classic.
The character select music's really good as well. That's really Japanese. Dun, dun, dun. That's really good.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good one. So yeah, those are my top 5.
Nice one.
But yeah, Neo Geo sort of tends to dominate a bit, obviously. But
yeah,
no, there have been some other, but there's ones that stay in your mind, isn't it, over the years? But yeah, that Technomancer, that was a good one. Again, I'd love to see a sequel to that as well.
Yeah,
that'd be good on the PS4 or 360 or something, wouldn't it?
Who developed that?
I don't know. It's one of those games that sort of came and went, and I don't think it probably didn't make a huge amount of money. I don't know.
It's Capcom.
Capcom. There you go.
Come on, Capcom, pull your finger out.
Yeah, well, they're probably so busy making the next Street Fighter they can't be bothered. But no, it was a spot-on game. It played well. It was loads of fun. It was had everything really. So yeah, bring it on. There's loads of games I wish would come out on the modern consoles, even if they're just copies of the originals. But
yeah,
I suppose you say walk-on beat-em-ups or one-on-one beat-em-ups, as we call. They've taken completely different paths because one-on-one has always remained popular. It's always had its followers, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But I think the walk-along beat-em-up was probably more popular amongst a non-hardcore gamer. Even though I would call myself a sort of, not so much now, but in the 90s, and that was more a serious gamer. I always really took to that game, and so I've said to you before, I've never met anybody who didn't like the game or remembers Streets of Rage. Why don't they bring out another one type of situation? But you get that. But with the whole genre, it's a genre that's been ignored. I can't understand why. Because it's what people. It's like it's people like it, and Streets of Rage 4 on the PS4 looks good. Yeah, it looks old-fashioned in a way, but it's all sharp, nicely done. You know, there's a lot more you could actually add to it than they've done. Although I think they've done a great job with it. It could go on.
I wonder if it's because it sort of reached a peak with Streets of Rage, and not translating into the 3D world, because I know 2D's come back with a vengeance. Otherwise, they wouldn't have released the fourth one. But I think it just doesn't. When you look at those early renditions of those walk-along beat-em-ups that have gone to 3D, they don't translate well.
No, I mean, well, it depends if they're like. I actually think they'd be better off keeping them in that sort of 2/2.5D. Because even in Streets of Rage, you can move back and forwards within the screen, but it's not proper 3D. But there's some movement. I think they should keep it as that, not try and keep it as a 3D one, because it'd be very hard to have two players doing that for a start. And because I like playing two-player co-op games, but quite often when you go too far apart, you get a split screen, and then it's all a bit can get a bit awkward.
Yeah, I suppose open worlds killed it a bit as well, because I suppose it's the arcadey feel of it kept it contained in, okay, we know it's only 6 or 10 missions or 12 missions in various different looking areas, whereas you can get now everything's open world. I think I don't play it, but I think Yakuza, I've heard someone before refer to Yakuza as sort of the modern day beat 'em up type thing. I don't know enough about Yakuza, unfortunately, but I can see how open world would have killed that sort of linear
on rails thing. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think I'm a fan of on rails games to a certain extent. I think having an open world is not necessarily always a good thing.
No,
because nothing is endless. No world can have an endless amount of things happening. It's gonna get repetitive even in that. No, I think there's room for both of these things. But I know what you're saying, and I understand that a lot of the companies weren't interested in 2D, because 3D came in and it started to get popular. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of people that like the old games, and as you say, making a bit of a comeback now. But I just think it's that particular genre. It's a shame it almost pretty much died out, apart from say the odd indie copy and something else. As a commercial entity, it's pretty much died out, hasn't it? It's only Streets of Rage 4, which came about 20 odd years after the last one.
Speaking of the Neo Geo, I played Aggressors of Dark Combat, which is like a sort of a merge of the two almost. I suppose it's more of a one-on-one, but it's got the mechanics and feel of a walk-along beat-em-up, and that was interesting as well. That was. I mean, that plays so differently to a normal fight. Well, it does literally plays like a walk-along beat-em-up. You just happen to be one-on-one, but it's because it does scroll a bit, but and the plane of movement is like a walk-along beat-em-up. But
because that was the same company.
It's hard as well.
Because the company that did it, RADK, I can't remember what it stands for, and they also did World Heroes. And there's another game that you could jump to the background bit. It was called Savage Rain. I don't know if you've seen that yet.
Yes,
that's
I
not
have.
A bad game.
I played that. Is there a sequel, or was that a sequel?
I don't think it's a sequel. I mean, it might have characters from other games, but there might have been a sequel. I never played it. But, Savage Rain was.
I'll tell you if I played it because it'll be on here. Yeah, Savage Rain. Yes, because that's the one with the Joker, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the girl with the bowling ball.
Yeah, it was good. Quite good. I quite enjoyed it. That
was really funny. The bowl, and she's throwing the bowling ball and smacking him on the head with the bowling ball. Is it a bowling ball? Yeah, it was a bowling ball.
It's a long time since I played it, but I've been quite impressed with it at the time. But another game which I really liked on the Neo Geo called Last Blade. There was Last Blade and Last Blade 2. It's a sort of Samurai Showdown, but less bizarre, but like really beautiful graphics. I remember when it first came out, it's very traditional sort of Japanese music. With like, you'd have like they're quite into cherry blossom tree. So there'd be a little cherry blossom thing just floating down. That's a very iconic sort of Japanese thing to have. But yeah, Last Blade, that's a really hard, but it's a good game. It's a good fighting game. That took some
Nice.
effort to get through. But yeah, it's Samurai Showdown, but not so crazy. It's a bit, I suppose, in a way, it's not the way I'd normally like it. It's actually slightly more, sort of as it can be, realistic. It's more serious fighters rather than Samurai Showdown's full of crazy odd bods, isn't it? As well as straightforward samurai fighters, which I appreciate. I like, which I'm quite looking forward to the new Samurai Showdown on PS4. So be interesting to see. I will be getting that when it comes out. Probably won't get the collectors, but I might see if I can find somewhere I can get it from.
Yeah,
because they won't be selling it down in your local game shop, will they? Unfortunately.
Is it not out
but
yet?
It's weird
I thought it was out. Maybe not. Might be out on Switch.
I think it's in July. It's coming out on PS4.
Okay.
Which is tomorrow. But no, I don't know. It's not long off. But yeah, because you mentioned it in an email, I thought I'd have a look. I thought I might get that. I wouldn't mind getting it as a hard copy. But yeah, that collector's edition looks really good. It's great because you get like a proper shop box from the Neo Geo.
Yeah, it looks really good.
Just houses all your stuff, I suppose. But yeah, that'd be good. You could put your Samurai Showdown 2 in it.
I could, yeah. Hopefully it will fit.
Well, I thought it must be the right size.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of it, really. But yeah. There was a system came out a while ago. I think it was like Neo Geo Gold or something. It was.
Oh, the
somebody
X.
brought out. Yeah, this like weird system where it was it looked like a console. We opened it up and it ran on little SD cards or something like that. But it looked really interesting, and I never got around to getting one. And eventually, sort of thought about it, but I got opinions from people I knew saying it wasn't that good, So
yeah, I looked online when I was first looking into Neo Geo, and the reviews weren't great. And because I didn't know what I was doing, I thought, do you know what, I'm better off just getting an original console.
Well, yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'd rather have the PS4 hamster versions than I would that, because it misses out animation. There's no point. If you don't want it worse, you want it possible. I don't mind them being a bit souped up. I don't want them looking worse than they did.
There's still there's still about £300-400 those things. They're quite expensive. I mean, you could own all the hamster games for less.
Yeah, exactly. But some people, I think people liked it because it had it looks like a proper Neo Geo thing, even though it wasn't. I don't think anything had anything to do with it, that I know of. I might be wrong. But no, I didn't hear any good things about it.
I don't know why they didn't release the hardware as if it was the original one and do what the Neo SD with the Terra Onion and what they're doing. You just put a little memory card in the top and you can play all the games on the original console. I don't know why they've not done something like that, because they make buckets of money out.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I'd never even heard of it. Then when I got in touch with Fraser, I knew about the Neo SD. He was like, wow, I can have every game. And I know it's not nowhere near as good as having all the original cartridges, but then again, that would be tens of thousands of pounds to buy all that lot. Whereas, a few £100 and you've got original console. And so if you do want to buy a few games, you still can.
It doesn't take up 2 rooms as well.
No, that's true. Yeah. Be nice though, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
To have all the Neo games on cartridge. But,
the problem is, as soon as you finish with the cartridge, you're like, right, now I've got to get all the CD.
Yeah. And there was a Neo Geo Pocket. Did you know that?
Yeah, I've seen that online. It's fairly cheap. They're porting all those games to Switch as well. I think Hamster are doing that.
Yeah, I never got one. There was a Neo Geo Pocket and a Neo Geo Pocket Color. But Fraser showed me like a one-off special one, not a one-off, but a very limited edition one. It looked really good, but I don't want to play a Neo Geo game on a little tiny screen. That's the point Neo Geo is all about. Big, colourful, noisy, exciting, not it on a little, But that's mine. If you're a collector, you want these things, obviously, but I'm not.
Yeah. And it's not exactly anyone going up against Game Boy in history is always shown as just not survived.
Yeah. No, I think it was fairly short-lived. I don't know how many games came out for it. I don't know, probably less than 100.
It looked great.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it's a lot. Let's face it. I had a Game Gear back in the day, the Sega, and that wasn't that bad. But for me, the only sort of games that I'd like to play on a little handheld would be puzzle or possibly a decent RPG or something. Action games, for me, just the screens are too small. And to be honest, I remember playing an RPG on the Game Gear, and it was quite good, but I found if you're looking at it for hours on end, it gives you eye strain. Just like the concentration,
But, I think we've covered most. I can't think of many more that we've named more than I thought we were. I mean, something I'll touch on is the sort of Marvel versus SNK and Marvel versus Capcom games. Yeah, they were really good when they came out. But it seems really strange to me that you wouldn't. I know they did X Tekken, but it wasn't meant to be very good. I never actually got around to playing it. But it surprises me that they don't do that more often. I mean, I would happily pay for like Capcom versus who makes like Tekken versus SNK versus Capcom. Like if you had all of them shoved together, and that's probably an expensive license, but I would pay 80 quid for a game that's shoved, like even if it's only sort of 6 characters from each one.
Yeah,
I'd pay money to play a game like that where it's got all of the best ones in the. I take it that the Street Fighter X Tekken didn't work because Tekken is predominantly a 3D game compared to Street Fighter, which is 2.5 / the old. So I know it's 3D, but it's still the plane of 2D.
It's 2D play, definitely. Yeah.
And Dead or Alive, which is even more sort of 3D. You move around a lot more in sort of Dead or Alive. But I mean, I'd pay that. I mean, even like we're saying, for them to give a modern version of Galaxy Fight, if you took 2D Street Fighter, 2D King of Fighters, and Galaxy Fight, if you shoved all those in one game, I'd love it. I'd buy that. I'd pay money for that. Take my money.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Or they could take some of the really good one-on-one fighters and turn them into walk-along beat-em-ups.
Yeah.
Galaxy Fighters, walk-along beat-em-up. That's got to be a winner, isn't it?
That'd be great.
Yeah.
I can't see them doing that, but that'd be great.
No, it'll never happen in a million years, but I'd love that.
Yeah.
One of my favourite sort of genres with some brilliant, wacky anime, sort of like Rumi and other. Just be great.
Because you could do a different every sort of mission or level could be a different planet. So you go along that planet beating up. It's I don't know. It's strange that they've just not just had more versus crossover games like that. It just seems like it would make so much money on both sides if you agreed to take. Well, I suppose it doesn't work that way, 50-50 each, but it's far more complex than that, I would have thought. But I mean, why not?
Well, I mean, SNK are only software now anyway, so it's not like a problem.
Yeah, and even things with like Mortal Kombat, they get licenses to like the Alien, the Predator, what's his name, Terminator, all those type of characters. They get the license for those. Why could you not just cross over with one of your rivals and make both make the same amount of money out of it because you know it's going to sell? Just seems a bit odd.
Yeah, I can remember being up in a game shop up in London with your dad, and they had the most recent Fatal Fury, whatever it was, and Darkstalkers has been the latest. To be honest, Darkstalkers look better. Your dad just said, that one looks better. I grudgingly had to admit it did look. It just looked more anime, and it was just nice and fluid. It really did work well. It's just like admitting that your football team's worse than somebody else, isn't it? It can't be done. No, so there's never the type of game I've looked, apart from walk-alongs, I've sort of given up on. So you told me about Street Fighter 4 and one-on-ones. It's only really the Neo Geo that kept me up with them, really. And I can remember seeing like some of the Streets of Rage when they came out on the PS3, and I think, God, they're really good. You know, they've really made the graphics spot on and PS3 and PS4. But I think I remember thinking it's a shame they couldn't have done that with the Neo. But I suppose they have, because some SNK games are coming out on different.
Not enough though. I mean, it's. I think I emailed Hamster saying, when are you going to release more? Because they said they're starting to do all the Pocket Neo Geo games. I'm like, well, why don't you finish doing all the other ones first?
Yeah.
It's like things like Matrimony and all the other ones. What they should be coming. That would sell. There's so many people that would enjoy that game if they released that on PlayStation, Xbox, Switch. There's so many like that they need to release.
When's the PS5 coming out?
It was October. I think it's pushed back to November. I think.
Not that far off then.
Yeah, it'll probably get pushed back again. Probably, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I'm not excited about it or anything, but I expect I'll have to get one because so anything you have to have the see what's coming out.
PS5 just looks like a router. I don't know if you've seen a picture of it.
It's not yet, no.
I did a good impression last time. Can I do it again? This is what it looks like. Looks like that.
Right, really exciting.
Literally looks like that.
Wow.
Like a router. Yeah, it's odd.
Wow.
And it's huge. They put it next to a PS4 Pro. It's massive.
All right.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Thanks, Graham, for joining for another chat.
It was a pleasure.
And we'll see you again soon.
Cheers.